Hi there folks, it was Khalil Gibran who wrote, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." Now, as we go down the river of life, we have those moments where there's this complete joy, where we are enjoying our life, things are working, there's order, and the rivers are calm, the rivers are gentle. But then what happens is we go through this experience of a loss. It can be a loss in many different aspects, but it's a loss of meaning that maybe we had once in our life and now it's gone. And that's when we hit the rapids. That's when the waters become choppy. There are rocks that the water's smashing up against, and we start feeling these bumps up against these rocks, the rocks of loneliness, the rocks of depression, the rocks of sadness, the rocks of denial, the rocks of anger, whatever that process of grief is. And as we go through these rapids, the big question to ask oneself is, how can we allow ourselves to get through these rapids a little bit more elegantly? And I'm not talking about denying ourselves this grief process, but how can we allow ourselves to get through to the other side, wherever that other side is? Because as we're hitting these rocks, we don't even perceive that there is another side. We can get lost in that space where we think this is how it is for the rest of my life. So there is a way that allows us to get through this a little bit more elegantly, and I'd like to share some thoughts or ideas around this. And for me, one of the first points is around acceptance. And in fact, there's two. It's acceptance and becoming present to the process. Now, when I was younger and I hit the rapids of life, I didn't want to be there. I was afraid of landing on the rocks, and I'd do whatever I could to get away from them. And it was almost like I was jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. I just found myself in this eddy of chaos, and I just wasn't getting through. And it was almost a spiritual awakening that I had, one could call it, but it was when I learned that in life there's both order and chaos. Within order there is chaos, and within chaos there is order. And both are required for life to actually happen. And I'll give you an analogy. When we look to the stars at night, and you look at this beautiful tapestry of the universe above us, it looks incredibly peaceful, it looks so calm, and in fact it is calming to look at. You see this complete order. But as we take a telescope and we go a little bit deeper, and let's say we look at one of those stars, and we look at it close up, we notice that there's chaos on the star. There are flames, there are these gases coming together and erupting into space. There are electromagnetic storms. And if indeed you look at a supernova, where it's the ultimate in chaos, it's where the star actually dies, it implodes and then explodes. There is this complete chaos, but behind this chaos, and we go into the chemicals, the chemical composition of the gases, the hydrogen, the heliums, the oxygen, they form this incredible recipe, this most ordered recipe that allows for the heat and energy to create life. And indeed for the supernova, what is created out of this wonderful recipe is carbon, which created life, which created me. So there's this order within this chaos, and even behind that, you can go deeper, you'll find more chaos. When you go to a quantum level, you see an atom and it appears in one place and then it appears in another. There's this perceived instability, but out of all of this chaos comes life. So for me, this was one of my first realizations, is to accept that the rapids are inevitable. No matter what journey you're on, you're going to hit the rapids. And instead of avoiding them, what I started to do was go into them. And that was the next layer of acceptance, and I should say presence, that came with it, was to become present to the process, this process of grief I was going to go through. And as I allowed this process to take place, I started to accept the anger, I started to accept the sadness, the loneliness, the sense of loss. And it was through this acceptance that I feel, Rumi talks about dying to oneself. It was through this acceptance where I allowed that old part of me to die. It's not about forgetting, it's not about moving on, it's about moving forward even with that pain. But what you start doing is you start making peace with that pain in this process. And through this death, dying to oneself, this ego death, we surrender, we let go to those attachments that really intensify the pain. And again, I'm saying it's not about forgetting. And this allows us to move a bit more elegantly through the rapids. What happens through the surrender is we become part of that water flow, and the water will guide us around the rocks. And as we do so, we move to a place beyond. And this place beyond, for me, it's where this new life has given birth, where I'm this new person. I can never be the same person I was before. And this new person, in this new place, what happens is, as I surrender, there are new doors open. It might be in the form of a new career, new relationships. It might be in the form of realizing you want to make something possible for other people who've been through, who are going through the process you've gone through, whatever those doors are. It allows one to enter this new world. And this is where it gives birth to a new way of living. Becoming present also allows me to be more mindful of what's happening whilst I'm in the rapids, what's happening with my thinking, because what can happen, we can get stuck in those eddies that I got stuck in, where we are thinking, what if, I should have, I could have, if only, and the blame that goes with it, blaming, other people, blaming myself, blaming life for why is this happening to me. And when I stop doing that, when I notice my thinking, I can maybe change it slightly, where I go to, thank you for giving me this experience, even though there is blood, sweat and tears in that process. But what I'm doing is I'm preventing myself from getting sucked in, sucked under, and I'm going inwards, and it allows me to flow better with the process. And yes, water always finds its resting place. And even if you look at waterfalls, after this chaos, beneath the waterfall is this pool. And when I arrive in this pool, it gives me a chance to rest, to really appreciate what I've become. And yes, I suppose as the journey of life continues, I will continue along the river after a bit of a rest, and there will be more rapids ahead, but I'll be a different person when I face those rapids. And maybe those rapids are there to teach me more of what I am, more of what I'm capable of. And yeah, folks, these are just some thoughts and ideas, and until we chat again, take care and stay aware.